Alright, so I got a story here for you guys that honestly should not be that surprising to anybody who watches Fox News clips on a semi-regular basis or understands how they use their rhetoric for fear-mongering about any center-left or even centrist policies that are pushed forward by Democrats here in the United States. So, as a part of this ongoing Dominion lawsuit against Fox News, which apparently could end up with Fox having to pay out upwards of like $1.6 billion to Dominion, voting systems as a result of them perpetuating these lies about the 2020 election being stolen, which, surprise, surprise, it absolutely was not. But we have this ongoing lawsuit, and we've been getting some pretty interesting documents. If you guys remember, we had some leaked text messages that came out or emails that came out about how guys like Tucker Carlson or other political commentators on Fox News who constantly lick Trump's boots on a regular basis actually despise Trump probably as much as any Democrat. And so that part of it was absolutely hilarious. But then we also get stuff like this. Okay, so here from Mediaite, they say, quote, any and all Biden policies should be labeled as socialism. 4 new revelations from the Fox News Dominion lawsuit. Okay, so we're going to focus on that first one here, right? So just a little update before we get into the socialism aspect of this, here about where the current status of this case with Dominion is actually standing. So they say more Dominion voting system slides used during a recent court hearing in the voting company's $1.6 billion defamation lawsuit against Fox News were made public on Friday. They say the Dominion lawsuit has pulled back the curtain on the inner workings of Fox News, particularly focused on the 2020 presidential election and internal discussions amongst hosts and executives denouncing former President Donald Trump's election fraud allegations, which were given a platform on air. They say, quote, executives at all levels of Fox, both Fox News Network and Fox Corporation, knowingly opened Fox's airwaves to false conspiracies about Dominion, and Dominion wrote that in a recently unsealed filing. A 5-week trial is currently scheduled to begin on April 17th. So as of right now, it looks like Fox is going to try to push forward with this case, which should make this extremely interesting if they don't end up like settling out of this or trying to like pay some sort of a settlement in order to avoid actually going to trial. We are just going to continue getting some absolute gems out of some of this leaked information. And I mean, keep in mind, guys, the narratives that they were pushing on Fox at the time in the immediate aftermath of the election, it wasn't like it was some borderline like, oh, like maybe, you know, some small amount of people voted who maybe shouldn't have voted, or some, you know, tiny fraction of a percentage of voter fraud was actually taking place. No, they were airing conspiracies and giving weight to conspiracies like, you know, Hugo Chavez from Venezuela, who, by the way, is like not even in power, is not even alive at this point, that like somehow he was leading the charge in having socialist Venezuela steal our votes from these Dominion voting systems because they were being hacked, and just a whole bunch of absolutely deranged shit. And so on top of just the, you know, foundations of what this case is actually bringing forward against Fox, we also learned that, you know, none of these motherfuckers who are actually on air, especially guys like Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham and some of the rest of them, they don't even believe what they're telling their viewers. So it kind of gives you another message there in terms of, you know, what they think about some of the people in the Fox News audience, that it's not even just that they're telling egregious lies and like, you know, they're just wrong about something. It's that they know that they're wrong. They know what they're saying is completely insane and stupid, and they just don't respect their viewers enough to give them that accurate information because they just want to have this sort of like inner circle jerk between the viewers of Fox so that they'll be able to, you know, continue coming back and continue allowing Fox News to profit all of that. They're absolutely, honestly, just terrified of the people who watch their network, and they were scared at the time that they were going to go leave to go to OANN or Newsmax or one of these other more far-right outlets. But now we get to the socialism bit here. They say, quote, any and all Biden policy announcements to be labeled as socialism. Just a great journalistic integrity that we have going on here at Fox. They say, in an October 2020 email, Fox Corporation's senior vice president, Raj Shah, wrote an email with the subject line, lengthy memo read Tucker Carlson tonight, in which he suggested that any and all Biden policy announcements be immediately labeled as socialism. I wish, okay, I wish that Joe Biden Biden was the, leader of the vanguard party. Unfortunately, as he was, telling us in the 2020 Democratic primary when he said things like he would veto Medicare for all, a universal health care bill, if it managed to pass Congress and get to his desk, or when he had that meeting with the wealthy Wall Street shareholders and basically told them nothing is going to fundamentally change, right? That's who Joe Biden is, okay? He is a, centrist in the DC swamp. I think he is to the right of many Americans on most issues, but, at the end of the day, he is a capitalist. He is a fervent capitalist at that matter. And, this is a guy who, if you look throughout his Senate record, if you look throughout his career under the Obama administration, I mean, barely has ever met a war that he didn't like, barely has ever met some sort of like bipartisan compromise to screw over working class people that he doesn't like. And still, they decided to push forward with this idea that everything he was doing was socialism, right? I mean, if you would have had like President Bernie Sanders or something, then okay, fine. If he was pushing for Medicare for all or, increased unionization and stuff like that, and you go out there and you say, oh, he's a scary socialist, I probably wouldn't mind as much, and I would just honestly lean into that and be like, okay, you're calling these policies socialism. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that definition, but you're kind of aiding in at least building up this project of socialism in the United States in the minds of the American people because the policies are overwhelmingly popular. But with Joe Biden, I mean, it's just laughable at face value. I mean, we all know who Joe Biden is at his core, but they continue saying that the right will be keen to frame a Biden presidency as a vessel for a radical left committed to enacting socialism, framing any and all policy announcements as socialism and taken from an AOC Bernie Sanders playbook will likely animate Tucker's core audience, Shah wrote. I mean, think about this, right? Taken from the AOC Bernie Sanders playbook. We're talking about Joe Biden, the guy who ran against Bernie Sanders and basically stood opposed to almost every single major policy issue that Bernie was pushing for, right? I wish that he was just taking all of his notes from Bernie Sanders and just pushing forward with what Bernie would want to do. Even if he did that, that still would not actually be socialism. I mean, at his best, Bernie Sanders is a sort of democratic socialist, but that's not the same thing as a, scary socialist takeover of the United States, which, don't get me wrong, I would probably love to see in this country. But I mean, again, we're talking about Joe Biden here, a guy who, all of his major legislative accomplishments has been him trying to work with corporate Democrats like Kyrsten Sinema, who's now an independent, or Joe Manchin, this millionaire coal baron from West Virginia who he allowed to write his climate legislation with the Inflation Reduction Act and then demands that he works across party lines in order to work with Republicans to water down his legislation even more and more. We're talking about a guy who wouldn't even fight for the $15 minimum wage, let the Senate parliamentarian tank that piece of legislation that he ran on and promised the American people. I mean, it's just amazing for anybody to think that this guy Joe Biden is in the pocket of people like AOC and Bernie Sanders. I mean, it's just completely fucking ridiculous. But they finish here saying, while many pundits and observers have long criticized knee-jerk partisan attacks on the other side as lacking in substance, it is rare to see a news organization put in writing a suggestion to ignore the details of a presidential candidate's platform and simply dismiss them under a political label. Okay, so, I mean, again, this is what Fox News is, okay? They're not a news network. They're just a rank, far-right propaganda outlet that will do the bidding of the Republican Party, that will do the bidding of Donald Trump if it happens to suit them in any given moment, or do the bidding of Ron DeSantis if that happens to be their preferred candidate, and any policies that are intended to even materially or marginally uplift working class people, they are going to turn around and demonize it and try to call it socialist and communist, and it's this radical takeover, this neo-Marxist wokeness that is, rampaging throughout the country, and just try to dismiss them out of hand and scare their viewers into, number one, not really understanding what some of these policies are, but number two, into actually not supporting things that could materially help them. So, I mean, honestly, this story, again, is not surprising in any way, shape, or form, but it's just a reminder that this is what Fox News is. This is what Republicans are. I mean, this goes for the politicians as well, who constantly call every single thing that Joe Biden does some sort of a scary socialist agenda. And it also goes, okay, surprise, surprise, for many Democrats as well. And I'm not sure why this article just disappeared, but if you guys remember, back when they voted just a couple of months ago, many Democrats joined with Republicans in voting to condemn the horrors of socialism, right? I mean, that was something that was actually done by our Congress. They spent time in order to pass a bill just condemning socialism, just condemning an entire movement, an entire ideological framework, an entire economic framework, just out of hand, okay? That's what this country is. We are fervent capitalists. We are the center of the global capitalist empire, and you still have motherfuckers, even when it's just marginal crumbs given to working class people in the form of Joe Biden's policy agenda, they will still turn around and just like complete rank partisan hacks call it socialism in order to try to demonize it and in order to try to scare people away from an economic framework that could actually, in the long run, materially uplift millions of people in this country.
Everyone is saying good politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying